Thank you so much. First, thank you for being here today. I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we live in the most incredible city in the world, and we could be anywhere in the world tonight. But I like to say the universe and our desire to do more conspired for us to be here tonight together. It's a remarkable thing when we can literally be at the top of this beautiful city and together see and feel the purpose of bringing each other together. Food is a uniting thing. It's a common thread. I'm lucky enough to have a talk show where we say, let's talk about it. But oftentimes, the icebreaker is breaking bread, where we are able to say, let's talk about it. I lived in Chicago for 10 years, and one of the most magical things about living in Chicago as a Texas kid was having a punchki. Polish culture, for those who've never lived in Chicago, the most amazing, delicious, sweet donut in the world. But that donut opened my eyes to a culture I'd never known. I grew up in Texas, where barbecue is king, and where my food memory started with a 19-year-old single mom who brought me home from the hospital with my grandfather, a pit master, who spent his days and nights in the back of a grocery store grilling food. And so earlier when Leslie said, we need allies to support all of us, the ally in the room for me was a man named Lewis Mitchell, who grilled the best Texas sausage that you could ever imagine, the best brisket that you could ever imagine, but could not read. He signed his name with an X. But I make my living with words. Our journeys matter. Our connection with food matters. And the fact that you are here today to hear what these three remarkable individuals have to say makes this a wonderful occasion. So I think taking a brief moment to absorb, like a beautiful piece of bread in a gravy that's so delicious in front of you, soak up this moment, because we could be anywhere in the world today. I would be asleep with a 5-year-old. Exciting, I know. But we're able to be here together to celebrate all of these amazing women who are supported by you. You may never know their names, but the energy that connects us and the spirit of this moment belongs to you, them, and us. We're kind of like family. So thank you, family. Thank you. Now, I happen to have some very powerful family here. Don't ask us for loans, but yeah, you can. I think what you all do, and we saw in your individual videos, is absolutely inspiring. But I want to take you to the first food memory. My first food memory, well, my forever mayor, Michael Bloomberg's first food memory was shake and bake. I said to the table, what would you make if you had to make a solo meal? And Mr. Bloomberg said, shake and bake. I didn't know they still made shake and bake. But the hot spot is on you. What is your one meal you'd make for yourself tonight? Rich?
Well, this may be cheating. It's not that I would make for myself tonight, but the meal that I miss that I can't have again. So when I grew up, we always see people make fun of fruitcake on television. I never understood why you'd make fun of fruitcake, because I love fruitcake. Because my grandmother, Simona Jarvis, who passed away maybe 17 years ago, made the most amazing fruitcakes. And she made them once a year for Christmas. It was a months-long process because she would soak the dried fruit would soak in rum for a month, and then she would make maybe 30 or 40 cakes that she would give to people. And before she would bake them, she would do a test cake in the small tin that I remember, and I would get to have the first slice of the test cake. And, so my grandmother's passed 17 years ago. Unfortunately, that fruitcake is passed because no one in my family thought to document how she bakes this cake. But when I tell you I can taste that cake right now, I can absolutely taste it right now.
I love that.
That
so
would be
much.
my food memory. If I could do that, if I could make that fruitcake, that's what I would make.
I love that. I moved to New York in 2008, and my father passed away that year. And my mom could not, don't tell her I said it. My mom wasn't a great cook. She was a teacher. She could teach her to read and write, and she once stole a pea salad recipe from another colleague. But I have a cookbook coming out, and it's a love letter to my father because holding on to those recipes, and we heard that in the videos from the many breadwinners who held on to recipes from their heritage, it means something to us. I have to say, Ed, I am curious because I could see you thinking. Tonight, close your eyes. What would you cook tonight for yourself? No, wine is not cooking, Ed.
So, when I heard your story actually about leaving Texas, it actually made me think about when I was growing up. My parents loved to travel, and I can't say that I shared their passion when I was younger, but I appreciated it more and more as I got older. And we would go to some pretty interesting places. We went to Peru, we went to Guatemala. And I remember we went to India when I was, I think, probably 12 years old. And, India is, especially, 30 plus years ago, it's a very specific cuisine.
Yeah.
And we were there for 2 weeks. And we went to a restaurant where I was told they had burgers. And I'm like, yes, I'm gonna get a burger. So I ordered a burger and it came and I tasted it. And, I was taught to be polite and, finish your meal and everything, but I did ask, the waiter was like, this burger was, a little bit different. How did you make it? And he said, well, we made it with lamb. It's a lamb burger. And I said, why didn't you just make it with beef? And he said, because in our culture, in the Hindu religion, cows are sacred animals. We would never cook with meat. And I think at that point, you learn that cuisines, cooking is a window into culture. It's a window into religion, and you can learn a lot if you not just, taste the food, but think about it and draw lessons from it.
So you're cooking cereal tonight?
No. So when we got back to the States, if I behaved, I was given French toast for dinner.
Ah.
That was my favorite thing. My mom would make French toast, and one of, as a parent, my wife Jen is here, one of the things that I love is when my kids ask me for French toast for dinner, because it means that I make it as good as my mom.
I love that. So you make French, what's your secret recipe?
It's not that secret. Well, you take the bread. So what my mom did was she would add nutmeg to the eggs and the milk. And when I bragged about this to Frank Gribben, he said, "You don't put vanilla syrup or whatever call it." And then he was a little bit looked down on my French toast recipe, but the kids like it.
I love it.
You're invited whenever you want, Frank.
We're coming all tonight to the house. So full disclosure, the questions I have on this, I have not asked one single question because I like to be in the moment, and I was curious based on Shake and Bake what you all would prepare. Randy, you've had time to think, so you have an unfair advantage.
Yeah, Ed and Rich gave me some.
And Rich gave you a great French toast, and we have fruitcake, that's a whole conversation.
A lot.
And I love you. So tell me, Randy, what tonight, closing your eyes, would be the go-to meal?
So I don't know if it's a meal, but when I think of the first time that I felt that food meant something to me, probably, so my grandparents and my team knows this because I talk to my grandmother every single day. I call her my best friend. She's 89 years old. She watches your show too, Tamron. So she says hello. But Loretta May, but one of the things that she would always make, she's from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And so any folks from that region is scrapple.
Oh, I love scrapple.
And
Okay,
she would-
anyone know what scrapple is? Oh, thank you. You
So
could
she
win the
would-
presidential election knowing what Scrapple is. It's a very, very Pennsylvania thing.
So she would make it in the mornings. My grandfather's a minister, so that's what I would smell on Sunday mornings, the smell of that. And she says I'm too cute now, because once I found out what was in Scrapple, I stopped eating it, right? So Scrapple. And then the other thing, I think, I mentioned my grandfather's a minister, pound cake. So that was like a sign of respect when someone would bring a pound cake to your home. Many folks were from the South and moved to our community of Jamaica, Queens, and so they would bring pound cake as a sign of respect. So those are kind of the two things. I don't know how to make either,
Yeah.
but the two things I would rely upon.
I love all three of these answers because food is a window into your soul. And as you evolve, as you rise in your careers and your professions, we take those memories and experiences with us. I think sometimes when you ask someone what their favorite meal is, it tells you a lot about them. And it tells you a lot about how they see the world. And Rich, that brings me to the question about Robin Hood and the desire to create an engine for upward mobility to address poverty. Listen, I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for 30 years. The idea of addressing poverty may be in our hearts, but we recognize, if we are being honest, the deep challenges, the insurmountable challenges, it seems sometimes. But then we watch videos of the beautiful breadwinners who say, I didn't speak the language, I had the desire. We watch a mom with a food court put 3 children through school and then pass that along to her daughter. The idea of the upward mobility and the partnership with Robin Hood. Talk to us more about that.
Well, first of all, I think it's important, and I just want to shout out Hot Bread Kitchen, first of all, because I think the work, please applaud.
Yes.
I think the work that Hot Bread Kitchen does is really the epitome of our mission at Robin Hood. And by the way, we talk about meals. I had a cookie today, a chocolate chip caramel cookie from Jess, who was in that video. And my colleague,
out, Jess.
my colleague Iris will tell you that I moaned when I took a bite of that cookie today in the office.
Would you like to reenact it? Go ahead.
No, we're not going to do that. It's a family event. I think it's important to remember that poverty is not an eventuality. Poverty doesn't have to be. Poverty is a choice that we make. We make decisions collectively to enact policies to create a world where people do not have the opportunity to live to their dignity. I think it's important to remember that because we can absolutely make different decisions. We can have a world where everyone can live with dignity. The famous Martin Luther King quote, it's on his statue. I'm not going to try to do it because I'll butcher it, but he has the audacity to believe that everybody has the right to an education, a healthy meal. So our mission is a very simple one. We want to help New Yorkers escape poverty by putting them on the path to economic opportunity. And the hallmark of our work is that we want to make sure that the organization that we're investing in, organizations like Hot Bread Kitchen, organizations that don't only mean well, because there are lots of folks out here who mean well, but we believe that the people that we serve deserve more than best intentions. They deserve interventions that are effective. They deserve programs that work. So what we do is we identify high-performing, effective organizations in New York City, and we do everything we can for them to grow and thrive. And the truth is that in this city, which you call the greatest city in the world, really is the greatest city in the world because we are surrounded by people and organizations and institutions, some big, some mom and pops operating in somebody's church basement, who are every day making the American dream real for people who have been deeply and fundamentally excluded from the American dream. That's the business we're in. Find the best organization, invest in them financially with technical support. We help them grow. We invest in their leaders. And hopefully, every year, we get a little bit close to the American dream being a reality for more and more New Yorkers.
Love that. And I know that family's a priority for you. We heard the French toast story. And when you care about your family, it's almost impossible not to care about others. But Talk to us about why this is a priority for Citi. So often, I think people see individual, they see a company, and there's a divide. But with you and your team with Citi, it's comprised of people who see this as a priority, not just a company. Why is it a priority?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think part of our license to do business is to actually sincerely make contributions to the communities you serve. We were founded here over 200 years ago. When we look at our community investment, we think of ourselves really as impact investors. And we do that really in two ways. One is through our foundation. One of the programs that we just announced a new cohort of last week, Community Progress Makers, works with nonprofits that are trying to help solve some of the challenges that are facing New Yorkers, whether it's food security, whether it's job training and workforce development, housing, and we give them unrestricted grants. Whether it's capacity building or for programmatic use, we say, you guys know how you can use the money best. And we just announced 16 organizations in the New York area are going to receive $1 million for the next 3 years. Hot Bread Kitchen was one of those a couple of years ago. They did a great job, as you can see.
You can applaud that, please.
Has evolved. But the other powerful community investment tool we use is equity investing in double bottom line companies. So these are for-profit commercial ventures that are actually trying to solve problems. They're not 501c3s, but when you look under the hood, what you see are companies like the Mom Project, which help support women that have left the workforce, had children, and then want to return to it. Companies like Wealthy, which try to help children of older parents connect them with the social services that elder parents need, whether it's companionship, or other services. Or Pallet, which is a company focused on affordable housing with a wrapper of social service and supportive services around it. And one of the things we're proudest of, and Brandy McHale, who's here, runs both those teams for us, is if you look at the venture capital industry and you look at where the funding is, it's completely disproportionate to what society looks like. Only 1% of venture capital go to black male founders, and only 10% go to women founders. Our impact fund, 70% of our portfolio companies are either women-led or founded by people of color. So not only are we trying to support companies that have an impact, we're trying to also do our part to address some of the structural imbalances that young startups have faced.
Thank you so much for that. And I have to tell you, a common thread, again, that the three of you share is opportunity. And Randy, we all love the musical Hamilton. It's like, I'm not giving away my shot, right? You get an opportunity, you're not giving away your shot. You and your firm really focus in on not just the opportunity, but the idea of advancing equity and employment opportunities. It's one thing to be outside the room. It's another to finally get in and get your shot. And that's what you focus on a lot. Yeah. What is the firm doing to advance that opportunity, particularly that speaks to the breadwinners who are here?
So one, I think, is honesty. And our board chairman, Don Gogel, who's the former CEO of CD&R, always tells me, Randy, we need to talk about the hard truths. So if we're going to talk about the hard truths, and we talk about our newest residents, we also want to talk about our oldest residents. And we need to understand that there's a huge wealth gap in our country, right? We know that the black and white wealth gap is 10 times greater, right? We know that for Hispanics, it's 6% or 6 times, right? We know that number has only grown since 1960. So then when we incorporate into that equation our newest residents, we know that they have an uphill battle, right? So for CD&R, we first understand that we need to hold up a mirror and say, what do we need to do, right? It's a challenge that, in my industry, in private equity, there aren't many people who look like me, right? And so that's something that we are addressing first, is saying we need to approach this with humility, and we need to work with organizations like Hot Bread Kitchen and understand that they are the experts, and we need to meet them where they are. So we have decided to create a strategy that has 3 strategic pillars. One is our local dimension, where CD&R employees proudly live and work, and that's New York City and London. The second is within our portfolio companies. We have 5 industry verticals, 44 companies, an aggregate of 350,000 employees in the US, UK, Germany, France, and Luxembourg, right? So we want to be out there meeting our companies where they are to understand where there are pain points and where we can connect them to breadwinning talent and other organizations that we serve. And then within the employment ecosystem, we know that there needs to be more around policy, there needs to be more around advocacy, right? What are the levers for change that are going to help these breadwinners continue to win, not only for themselves, but for their families and for their communities? And we are only 3 years old. So I applaud Ed and Rich. They and their organizations have been doing this work for a long time. We are still earning the right to exist in the philanthropic space.
I love that. And so you're the newbie in this world, but you're here. I go back to, and I truly believe that we can put stats out, we can talk numbers, but at the end of the day, it really is about who you are as a human. And I love, Rich, you talked about your grandmom and the fruitcake. I love that you got us all on Citi bikes. My leg hurt from riding over here. Thank you. But I want to speak to the heart, because oftentimes you wonder, why me? Why am I in this position to help so many others? And the responsibility of that as an individual and as a foundation with Robin Hood. You're looking out at this audience, as I said, who could be anywhere in the world tonight. Well, anywhere in New York, maybe, because we're stuck here right now. But they could be anywhere. You could be at home. You are here. You are part of Robin Hood. And you are believing in people and in women who sometimes wake up thinking no one's rooting for them. You are, and Robin Hood is. How do you explain that to yourself when you wake up in the morning? My job is to root for other people. It's a great spot, in my opinion, to be in.
All right, this conversation got very deep.
Well, that's what I do on the Tamron Hall Show. At 10 o'clock Eastern Time, the mayor will be watching as well. We go deep because I think things get lost in numbers. If your heart is not reflected, what's the point? And I know when you told that fruitcake story, knowing all of us hate fruitcake, that was your heart speaking.
You didn't have my Nana's fruitcake.
I'm going to have it because you're going to make it for us.
I can honestly say that every day I am overjoyed that I get to get up, and every day my job is only to help New Yorkers live better lives. That's all I get to think about every day, and it truly is a blessing. Yeah. I think for a lot of us, I mean, we all come to where we are for different reasons, and for me, it's very personal. You know, I grew up in this city. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in a neighborhood where more than 70% of people are born into poverty, where fewer than 10% graduate from college. And I grew up feeling like I had tremendous privilege in this struggling low-income neighborhood. Grew up in a 2-parent household. My mom was also a teacher. She taught for 37 years at East New York High School in East New York, Brooklyn. Taught English and Spanish and ESL. She taught thousands of kids Spanish except for her own children, but that's a different story. And I remember growing up thinking that I was wealthy because I always felt like we had so much. But as I went forward, and particularly as I went to high school, I went to Stuyvesant High School here in New York, and it was my first time going to high school with kids who weren't low-income kids, who weren't black or brown from places like Brooklyn. And it was my first time really understanding the dichotomy that exists in New York City and the fundamental truth that there are two New Yorks. There's a New York of opportunity, and there's a New York that is denied opportunity. And often those New Yorks exist within a few blocks of one another. And so for me, having these educational advantages, and I went to an Ivy League college, I always felt guilty and disconnected because I was having a set of educational experiences that my neighbors were not, or the people in my neighborhood were not. And so I was just very lucky early in my life as a college student to find a service. I started volunteering in an after-school program, and it changed my life. Because all of this, when I realized I was holding so much anger about the experience that I had versus the experience that other kids in my neighborhood had, and kids who were just as brilliant, just as smart as any kid in New York City. They just didn't have a chance. They didn't get to go to the schools that I got to go to. They didn't have the church support that I had. But service really saved my life because that service experience taught me that there's nothing wrong with anger. Like, anger is a healthy emotion when faced with the inequities of this earth. But the challenge is, for all of us, is what are you going to do with that anger?
Yeah.
And so I was very lucky early on that I realized, working this after-school program, that I wound up starting a summer camp for these kids and find myself, I won't say how many years later, here at Robin Hood. I found a venue for my anger, a pathway to drive that anger into service. So every day I get up feeling blessed that I get to do this work, but feeling blessed that I found, through sheer luck, a friend asked me to go tutor with her this after-school program, that I found a way to justify the blessings that I had been given.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. I love that. And for you, and I go back, you mentioned your wife and your children, separate from the role at Citi, but connected to the role at Citi. When you watched those success stories of breadwinners, when you watched people given the opportunity to bet on themselves, how was that an empowering message and really a North Star for what you and Citi want to do?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I taste the food tonight.
Yeah.
What I see is opportunity and possibility. And if you just take, restaurants, obviously a huge part of the food industry, and you can, think about how a restaurant can be an economic development tool. A restaurant can transform a neighborhood, can drive commerce and tourism. You think about, Red Rooster and Sylvia's in Harlem. You think about Katz's in the Lower East Side. You think about how Union Square Park didn't start, in that neighborhood didn't start, improving until Union Square Cafe opened.
Yeah.
And you just start to think of this not as a job, but about, about businesses and economic opportunity. And you just never know where that's going to lead. And you never know all the dozens, hundreds, and thousands of people who either benefit from it or enjoy it. And that'll become cherished memories, for them. So to me, what's so amazing about this organization is it's about the food and it's not about the food.
Yeah.
It's about what the food and the skills, can lead to.
And Randy, I'll give you the last button up on this because when we were walking in, you said your mom is a fan, which means your mom is Tam Fam. So that's what we call the viewers of our show, Tam Fam.
Yeah.
So the pressure's on for you to impress your mom who's watching here.
It's my grandmother, though.
Your grandmother. Well, I'm 900, so I thought I was your grandmom's age. The reality is what you said in your video about the vision, about the purpose. It's a big night. It's a fun night. It's a celebration. And I can tell you're a joyful person. How good does it feel when we're all holding up our paddle boards and knowing that your 3 individual companies and firms are betting and rooting for these breadwinners and the women who will come after them, but you're also, this is a celebration. What do you want to celebrate in this moment?
So I want to celebrate all of the breadwinners who are here, those who have gone through the program, and those who are yet to come. Chef Barbara, who made the best tostones that I've ever eaten.
Chef Barbara.
And I had the opportunity recently to do some mock interviews where I went to Chelsea Market and I got to meet some of the breadwinning talent, many of whom were from Venezuela. And I'll also share, there's a partnership with another organization that Hot Bread works with, which we also partner with, Manny Cantor Center. And I've had opportunities to help those who are coming complete their work authorization forms. It is something to be in a room with someone. You can turn on the TV, we can all look at the quantitative data. We need to understand the narratives of people who are coming into our city and coming into our country. And what I saw is not what I often see on TV. I saw women and children. I saw those who had all their hopes and dreams in a folder. Right? I saw parents who had their kids a family of 4 in a hotel room with 2 beds, working hard, going to programs like Hot Bread so that their children could have an opportunity. When I did those mock interviews, you know the 2 words I kept hearing from all of the breadwinning talent in Spanish? Comprometido, which means committed, and apasionado, apasionada, which means passionate. You can't teach that, right?
Yeah.
So while Hot Bread Kitchen is teaching them the skills, they are bringing what every employer wants. We just have to be able to see it. So I think for me, you know, it's important that we all utilize our full potential with whatever stakeholder group we represent, whatever role we represent. Are we doing our part to help our newest residents truly thrive? Because they deserve it.
Well, that is true. They deserve it. I think the 3 of you, honestly, and I'm being very transparent, there were very beautiful questions written, but I thought it was more important that people got to know you and the teams that you represent, because we all have titles, but there's a beautiful book that I've carried around since I was 18. It says, "Who are you?" when there's nothing beneath your title, and it's just your name. And I love that you all represent your families and your names, and you represent that because you are rooting for families in this building who will go on to have amazing companies, who will go on to have amazing success because we believed in them. And the joy of my life was recently coming home to a huge basket of Hot Bread Kitchen goodies and just sleeping in the bed with all of the desserts and amazing things. So Jess, you kicked my husband out and I had a cookie. But at the end of the day, it is important that we know not just the name of the companies and all of that you represent, but it's also important that we know the heart. And your hearts are beautiful and they shine today in honor of the Breadwinners and Hot Bread Kitchen. So thank you all so much. And thank you for being here tonight.